Have you ever seen a perfect setup and still missed it? Or worse, entered too early, watched it go against you, and then later move exactly the way you expected? That moment is not about the market. It's about patience. Because most traders don't lose from bad analysis. They lose from not waiting. They see something forming, they feel like they might miss it, and before the setup is fully there, they act. And in that moment, it feels right. It feels like you're being proactive, like you're ahead of the move, like you're making a smart decision. But what's really happening is something much deeper, something most traders don't notice. You're reacting to the fear of missing out, not to the setup itself. And that fear is powerful. It creates urgency where there should be none. It makes you believe that if you don't act now, the opportunity will disappear forever. So you rush, you enter early. You convince yourself that it's close enough. But in trading, close enough is not enough. Because your edge doesn't come from being early. It comes from being precise, from waiting until your conditions are fully met, from allowing the market to come to you instead of you chasing it. And that's where patience becomes difficult, because waiting feels like doing nothing. You sit there watching the market move without you. Candles form, price moves, opportunities seem to appear and disappear, and you're just there observing. No entry, no action, no excitement. And slowly, that silence becomes uncomfortable. Your mind starts to wander. Maybe I should just take this one. It looks good enough. I don't want to miss this move again. And just like that, you break your patience. Not because the setup told you to, but because your mind couldn't handle waiting any longer. That's the part most traders underestimate. Patience is not just about time. It's about emotional control. Because the longer you wait, the more your mind tries to push you into action. It looks for reasons, for justifications, for anything that can turn waiting into doing. And if you're not aware of that, you will act. Again and again. And every time you do, you slowly weaken your discipline. You train yourself to accept incomplete setups. You build a habit of acting on impulse instead of structure, and over time, that habit becomes your default. You don't even realize it anymore. You just enter when it feels right. You trust your instinct, your gut, your emotion, instead of your plan. And that's where inconsistency begins. Because feelings change, but a system doesn't. So when you rely on feelings, your results will always be unstable. One day you're confident, the next you're doubtful. One moment you're patient, the next you're rushing. And that inconsistency shows up directly in your trades. Not because the market is random, but because your behavior is. And that's when you start to see the real role of patience. It's not there to slow you down, it's there to protect you. It protects you from bad entries, from emotional decisions, from trades that were never part of your plan. It keeps you aligned with your system, even when your mind is trying to pull you away from it. But to use it, you have to be willing to feel uncomfortable. To sit in that space where nothing is happening, to watch the market move without reacting, to accept that missing a trade is better than forcing one. And that's not easy, because it goes against what most people naturally want to do. They want action, they want movement, they want to feel involved. But trading doesn't reward activity. It rewards discipline. And discipline often looks like doing nothing, which is why patience feels so difficult, but also why it's so powerful. And when you begin to understand that, your perspective starts to change. You stop seeing waiting as wasted time, and you start seeing it as preparation. Every moment you spend observing without acting is not a missed opportunity. It's a moment where you are protecting your capital and sharpening your focus. Because the truth is, the market is always moving, but your opportunity is not always there. And that's where most traders get trapped. They feel like they have to be in the market to make money, like sitting out means falling behind. So they force trades just to feel involved, just to feel like they're doing something. But doing something is not the same as doing the right thing. And trading punishes that difference. You can take 10 trades in a day and still make nothing or lose. Or you can take one trade fully aligned with your plan, and that one decision carries more value than all the others combined. But that only happens if you wait. And waiting requires trust. Trust in your system, that your setup will come. Trust in your rules, that they are there for a reason. And most importantly, trust in yourself, that you can sit still without needing to act. Because without that trust, you will always feel the need to interfere, to jump in early, to take what isn't there, to create opportunities instead of recognizing them. And the moment you start creating trades, you stop trading. You start guessing. That's when the market begins to feel random, unfair, confusing, not because it changed, but because you stepped outside of your edge. And once that happens, patience becomes even harder. Because now you're not just waiting for a setup, you're trying to recover from mistakes. You're trying to make back losses, to fix what already happened, and that creates even more pressure. You feel like you have to act. But acting under pressure rarely leads to good decisions. It leads to rushed entries, poor timing, and even more frustration. And before you know it, you're stuck in a cycle, trading more, thinking less, and drifting further away from discipline. All because you didn't wait. And that's why patience is not just about entries. It's about everything. It's about waiting for the right conditions, waiting for confirmation, waiting after a loss, waiting after a win, giving yourself space to reset, to think clearly, to stay aligned with your plan. Because every time you rush, you carry emotion into your next decision, and emotion clouds judgment. But patience clears it. It gives you the ability to see things as they are, not as you feel them. It keeps you grounded, focused, and in control. It reminds you that you don't need to be everywhere in the market. You just need to be right when it matters. And that understanding begins to simplify everything. You no longer chase every move. You no longer feel the need to catch everything. You become selective. You become intentional. You trade less, but with more purpose. And that shift changes your results, not instantly, but consistently. Because now your actions are aligned with your edge. Your decisions are based on structure, not emotion. And your patience becomes your advantage. Something that most traders don't have, and that's exactly why it works.
And once patience becomes part of how you operate, something else starts to change. Your relationship with time. Before, every second felt important, every candle mattered. You watched every movement, reacting to small changes as if they meant everything. You felt like you had to stay alert at all times, ready to act, ready to catch something before it was gone. But now, that urgency begins to fade. You start to understand that not every moment requires your attention. Not every movement needs a reaction. The market can move without you, and that's okay. Because you're no longer trying to catch everything. You're waiting for something specific. And that clarity makes everything quieter. Your mind isn't jumping from one idea to another. You're not overanalyzing every candle. You're simply observing with a purpose. You know what you're waiting for. And until it appears, you do nothing. That doing nothing used to feel like weakness, like hesitation, like you were missing out. But now, it feels like control, like strength, like discipline in its purest form, because it takes more control to sit still than to act. Anyone can click a button. Anyone can enter a trade, but not everyone can wait, especially when the market is moving, when emotions are rising, when the urge to act is strong. That's where real discipline shows, not in how you trade, but in how you wait. And the more you practice that, the more natural it becomes. You don't feel the need to force trades anymore. You don't feel uncomfortable sitting out. You don't feel pressure to always be involved. You become selective, and that selectiveness protects you. It filters out noise, removes unnecessary risk, and keeps you focused only on what truly matters. It allows you to preserve your energy, your capital, and your mindset. Because trading is not just about money. it's also about mental energy. Every unnecessary trade drains you. Every impulsive decision adds pressure. Every mistake caused by impatience creates frustration. But patience does the opposite. It keeps you calm. It keeps you clear. It keeps you steady. And when your mind is steady, your decisions improve. Not because you found a better setup, but because you're finally giving your setup the respect it deserves. You're allowing it to form completely. You're allowing the market to confirm your idea. You're allowing probability to work in your favor. And that's where the real shift happens. You stop trying to control outcomes and you start aligning with probability. Because you understand that your job is not to predict perfectly, but to execute when the conditions are right. And those conditions don't appear all the time, which means most of your time will be spent waiting. And that's not a problem. That's the process.
And when you fully accept that, everything becomes simpler. You stop fighting the pace of the market and you start moving with it. You understand that opportunities are not something you create, they are something you recognize. And if they are not there, you let them pass. No frustration, no pressure, no need to be involved. Just patience. Because now you've seen what impatience does. You've felt the consequences of rushing, of forcing trades, of acting before the moment was right. And you've realized that most of your losses didn't come from bad setups. They came from bad timing, from not waiting. And that realization changes the way you approach every decision. You become more deliberate, more focused, more aware of what truly matters. Not the number of trades, but the quality of them. Not the speed of execution, but the timing of it. Because in trading, timing is not about being fast, it's about being ready when the moment is right. And patience is what keeps you ready. It keeps you aligned with your rules. It keeps you grounded in your process. It keeps you from turning a good plan into a bad decision. And over time, that discipline builds something stronger than any strategy. Consistency. Not because every trade wins, but because your behavior no longer changes. You wait when you're supposed to wait. You act when you're supposed to act. And you don't let emotion decide for you. And that's where most traders never reach. Not because they can't learn a strategy, but because they never learn to wait. So if there's one lesson to take from all of this, it's simple. Patience is not just a skill in trading, it is the edge. It's what separates reacting from executing. It's what separates noise from opportunity. It's what turns randomness into structure. And if you can master that, if you can truly learn to wait without pressure, without fear, without the need to always be in the market, then you won't just trade better. You'll trade with control. And that's where real progress begins.